Okay, hi everyone. We're a pretty small group today, pretty intimate. So I'll get you to say hello in the chat, just so that I know that you can hear me and that we are interacting together. Hey, and then we'll have a discussion about this topic. This is a new topic for Uprise, and so bear with me. It's a bit of an experiment. So let's see how it goes. I'll acknowledge the Gumbaynggirr peoples upon whose country I'm currently sitting. They're the traditional custodians of these lands upon which I'm meeting you today. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past and present. And I invite you to acknowledge and pay your respects to the traditional custodians of the land upon which you're sitting today, as well as a warm welcome to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. So I'm Nigel. I'm a psychological coach with Uprise. I'm a counsellor, psychotherapist, supervisor of psychologists, social workers, youth workers, case workers, psychotherapists, and counsellors, as well as other supervisors. Today, this is our overview. We'll look at the impacts of financial stress on relationships. What does the evidence say? Then we'll look at how to stress-proof your relationship against those stresses. So what can you do as a maintenance function rather than reactionary? And then we'll talk about talking about money and finances. So that's what you can do in the moment, when you can do what you can do when you're stressed. And then we'll look at how you can use stress as an opportunity to grow together through challenge. Let's see how we go. I'd love your feedback as we go along. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are you resonating with? And what's not resonating for you? Okay, so we know that more than half of all Australians currently report that they are struggling financially. We have rapidly rising cost of living in terms of inflation. We've recently had rapidly rising interest rates. So anybody who was feeling that they were doing well with their large mortgage and 2% interest rates, they've now tripled their interest repayments. And I can tell you from personal experience, that's a really significant increase. And if we look back to the 1980s, when interest rates were closer to 18%, we can actually imagine that those could triple again. And so to think about the possibility of somebody's paying interest, going, yeah, I can handle paying my interest on my mortgage, and then suddenly that might increase over the course of a couple of years ninefold. Suddenly it changes the state of play. And in terms of what governments are trying to achieve by raising interest rates, it's effective, because as you raise interest rates, people lose interest in borrowing money and spending that money. And as you reduce the interest down to almost zero, people become very excited about borrowing money and spending and investing that money. So at 6 to 7%, 8% for some of us, we've got middle ground now. And I've got open are we going to have high interest rates? I won't take too long, but the predictions are that it should stabilize. So hopefully it'll stabilize, but we can't know for sure. So this cost of living is the biggest issue currently affecting individual well-being. So people who are seeking mental health support for anxiety, for depression, for various other psychological disorders, underlying the triggering of those symptoms is the rising cost of living. So 50% of people seeking psychological help, they're doing so for anxiety and depression related to financial stress. And 20% of Australian couples cite money problems as a pressure on their relationship. So I guess it's that 20% that we're talking to today. So what about you? Are you feeling stressed by your finances? So do any of these resonate for you when I read these out and ask you these questions? Are you not feeling quite yourself? Are you feeling overwhelmed by bills? Have you tried to draw up a budget but realized that when you draw it up, you can't actually quite make it work? It always seems to end up in the negative no matter how you work the numbers. Are you finding that you're ignoring emails about finances that you don't want to see? Are you leaving bills unopened? Are you finding yourself spending money on your credit card because there's nothing in the account? Are you spending money that's in your account and ignoring the consequences? This is pretty common behavior. It's like, I'll deal with it later. Deciding to deal with it later when it comes to money matters. Are you finding yourself not discussing your financial situation with your partner, with your friends, or with your family? Do you find yourself being more tempted by the lotto, the pokies, or races than usual? This is a sign that you're looking for a quick fix, that you're trying to find a way out of this that essentially relies on rolling the dice and waving a magic wand. Are you withdrawing socially from friends and family for financial reasons, or just out of embarrassment? Also, you might find yourself drinking more, taking more painkillers, or using other drugs to distract yourself from your financial worries. And of course, drinking, painkillers, drugs, video games, Netflix, all sex, wonderful distractions from what's happening in the bigger picture of life. But then when the effects wear off and we come back to earth, we still have to deal with the reality. So these aren't ever solutions. Are you putting it off asking for help simply because you're just too embarrassed to admit that actually you've got a financial problem that you can't find your way out of? Very often, real financial stress comes from debt. The biggest issue we have in Australia is personal debts. If you attended one of my earlier webinars, we talked about how you can leverage debt. So you can use debt to build wealth, and most people who build wealth by leveraging debt. But if you're using debt to buy cars, to buy couches, to buy Christmas presents, then that you'll then be hit with interest that is greater than your ability to repay. And it's very much about short-term thinking. Going, look, I want this today. It's important that I have this today. Need a couch, need a car. The kids should have a good Christmas, and I'll worry about the ramifications later. So what do those things then tend to do to relationships? Well, conversation and communication tend to drop out of relationships. Is this happening for you? We tend to disconnect, have a lack of intimacy. There's less feelings of love. There's less sexual intimacy in the relationship. There's just less general kindness and touch and turning towards one another, a peck on the cheek, making a cup of tea, sitting down together, holding hands, which takes the fun and the joy out of the relationship. When people are worried about money, they tend to have a feeling that they can't enjoy anything because there's something else that they always have to worry about. And what can be really sad is a felt sense of connectedness with others as a person isolates themselves, as they take up various habits and drugs of addiction to distract themselves, but all ultimately isolating and leaving a person feeling quite alone. What I want to address next is general good advice around relationships, and that the best protection is prevention. The best way to deal with an issue is to prevent the issue from occurring in the first place. And so this is where you can stress-proof and future-proof your relationship in a way that doesn't actually cost you anything. It costs you time, it costs you effort, it costs you your care, your love, but it doesn't cost you anything in financial terms. So this comes from John Gottman, and there's a link on the bottom of the screen there, and it's called the Sound Relationship House. And you'll see that the two pillars holding the roof up on this sound relationship house are trust and commitment. Trust is super significant in relationships, and in particular, it's really important for, particularly, I'm going to talk about heterosexual relationships. It does include other relationships, but the research for obvious reasons is primarily conducted on heterosexual couples. And what's really interesting about the research is that what's important in terms of trust in a relationship is that the female in the relationship trusts the male in the relationship. It doesn't matter that much how much the man trusts his female partner in the majority of relationships. You might want to challenge that. You might want to say that's super important, and it is at a felt level. But what happens to men that doesn't happen to women in relationships where the man isn't trusted by his partner is that he will die 15 to 20 years earlier than other men who are trusted by their partners. So there's a significant health impact upon relationships where there isn't trust. Trust is about, at the end of the day, trust is a decision. I work with a lot of couples, and it's a really tricky one to get your head around. People have got stories around trust. You have to earn trust. You have to build trust. And these things, to an extent, they're true. But at the end of the day, in a relationship, it just comes down to a choice. I choose to trust you, or I choose to not trust you. So if you want to future-proof your relationship, then it's really important that you make that choice, particularly if you're a woman in relationship with a man, or a woman in relationship with a woman, making that choice to trust your partner, even if that's really difficult. What that does is it then sort of leads to the way that you communicate with your partner. So if you think about how you communicate with your partner, if you don't trust them compared to when you do trust them, very different styles of communication. One focuses on an assumption that their partner is a good person doing the right thing. That's if you trust your partner. If you don't trust your partner, then you tend to focus on an assumption that your partner's doing the wrong thing, and that it's your job to find out what that wrong thing is. And you can hear, even in that simple kind of description, how that would undermine the foundations of a sound relationship house. Commitment is also a decision. It's about getting into conflict with your partner and not going to that place where you say, oh, I don't know why I'm here. This is too hard. I can't do this. Maybe we shouldn't be together. Yeah, all of those things, it's like taking a sledgehammer to the wall of the house and really causing significant ruptures that mean that your relationship is going to struggle to stand up on its own. So that's the trust and commitment. So if we build up from the bottom, so the Gottman suggests that we build up from the bottom, the bottom part there is making a real effort to know your partner's world. Yeah, to know who their friends are, to know what their friends do, to know their family members, what their family members do, who they are, what kind of relationship your partner has with their friends and with their family members. Knowing what your partner's likes and dislikes are in terms of food, drink, hobbies, activities, what they're passionate about, what they're interested in, what they do for work, what they do at work, who they work with, their relationship with their manager or their relationship with their staff. Know your partner's world, have an interest in it. They call it a map because, you want to hold in your mind a mental map of who your partner is and what their world entails, so that you can then engage actively with them around any of those topics. You can either be proactive or you can be responsive when they talk about things that are clear to them. Sharing fondness and admiration is just about expressing it. often we think it, we feel it. I was talking to a young man this morning who's just like, wow, my wife's had a new baby and like she's just been so tough, and she's really made sure that she's been able to, she really struggled with breastfeeding, but she's overcome it. And I'm just so in awe of who she is. And I said, well, have you told her that? Have you made it clear to her? And he says, well, I think so. She knows, doesn't she? Like, I think she knows. And I said, well, maybe you should tell her again. And if she's, because people have a wall up often to being given praise. And so we might need to tell them again. And there's very few people who don't like being praised, who don't like being, hearing someone else's expression of fondness and admiration. I love you. I like you. I like this about you. I love that about you. I really appreciate this. I really appreciate that. It's a habit. I didn't have it in my relationship until I sort of did this work and just started to make a habit out of it. And it's amazing how quickly our habits can change. I just find myself always saying to my partner, to my kids, thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it just creates a tone of positivity in the relationship. Turn towards instead of away is when we're feeling grumpy with our partner, when they've done something that we don't like, when they've started a conversation and our brain goes, oh my God, here we go again. Really? Now? Not a good time. and we want to shut our partner out. And instead, and I remember literally like get your head and force your head towards your partner to look at them and go, okay, what is it you would like to say? What is it you would like to talk about? And that being, so different from, can't be bothered with you. You're too hard. You make my life difficult. It's again, these are small things that happen in small moments throughout the day-to-day life of a couple. They make a big difference. The positive perspective is about looking for the good memories. It's about going, okay, what have been the times in our lives where things have gone well? What have I enjoyed about being with you? What have I loved about you and who you are? And how can I tell stories about those good times? How can I tell stories about those positive experiences? How can I make a point of remembering the good times and sharing those with you? Because we get into, it's like a switch that flicks. Once we get into like a negative cycle, we start to, our brains are wired this way. If we're looking for the negatives, we will find the negatives. And you'll know this from your arguments with your partner. This reminds me of the time when you did this, and then there was this time you did that, and there was this time you did this, this time you did that, there was this time you did that, and now I feel like I've built up this whole case about how you are this kind of person that I don't want you to be, but this thing that you've done has made me feel this way, and now I've built a whole case around it, and now I'm ruminating around it, and I can't stop. So we need to interrupt that pattern, stop it, and start to focus on the good memories, the positives. There was this time when you did this good thing for me, this good thing for me. I really like the way you did that. And that also triggers the brain to go, oh yeah, the brain's a computer. Whatever you tell it to do, it will do. And it's connected to your ears, your eyes, your nose, your body, all of your senses. It's got antennas out there in the world. But it will only do what you tell it to do. So you need to make an effort to program your brain to look for the good stuff. Then you need to manage conflict. And we'll talk about that more in a moment around communication. Prioritizing your partner's dreams is just, again, it's a switch, because often we're hooked in. I know what I want. I know what my goals are. I know what my dreams are. What about you? What about my partner? What do they want? How can I help them secure that? Maybe I can listen to them more. Maybe we can talk about it more. Maybe we can, maybe I can just offer my support and my encouragement and my belief, in them, that they're able to make those dreams come true. Maybe I can find a way of making that happen. And then have meaningful rituals. So meaningful rituals are pretty simple. As I said, this isn't something that costs anything. It can be, we always have a cup of tea. In my house, I'm just trying to think of rituals. We have a hot breakfast, like hot breakfast with eggs and mushrooms and on toast, avocado. I made that for my partner late this morning because we'd had a busy morning. Late this morning, had a break before I had to get back into work, and that was what we did. We sat down together and we ate our eggies on toast. But that was a ritual where that happens pretty frequently in our relationship, and that we can rely upon. So is it a cup of tea in the mornings? Is it a chat at bedtime at night? Is it even just watching your favorite show with your partner in the evening? Is it going for a walk in the park? These rituals create shared meaning, and they create memories that last over time. Okay. So then when we have financial challenges, we need to talk about them. And we need to be able to talk about money and finances. And that can be really hard. While financial stress can impact negatively on relationships, research has shown that this is significantly less when couples communicate well. So we need to be able to communicate about this. In the previous webinars in this series, we talked about mindset. I talked about mindset. And we looked at what is your relationship to money? What is your relationship to finances? What was the family that you grew up in? What was your parents' relationship to money? How did their relationship play out when they had money stresses? My partner is always talking about how not all she remembers, but a lot of what she remembers from her childhood is her parents fighting because they didn't have very much money. And so for her, talking about money and finances brings up feelings of, this is going to get ugly. As a child, if your parents start fighting, you tend to make yourself scarce. So she's got this natural inclination within her body to go, I don't want to be here. In my family, similarly, money wasn't talked about. It wasn't ever thought about, but it was always, male dominated. Well, in my immediate household, it was like, okay, dad was the money guy, mum was the housewife. They didn't need to talk about it because dad would take care of it. Dad took care of his part, mum took care of his part. So long as that was all fine, which in my case it mostly was, they didn't need to talk about it. So I had no more role model for talking about money and finances. But we need to. We need to. So how to communicate effectively, not just about money, but about pretty much anything, but it includes money and finances. So the first step is to make time. Couples very often don't make time, particularly after they've had children, because before we have children, we have loads of time. We have loads of time, loads of energy. We can stay up till 3 a.m. We can do it again the next night. We can sleep in on the weekend. We don't have to make time for things. And it can be difficult. Like I have a very, very scheduled life, meetings, etc., etc. My partner doesn't. She's like, I don't want to have to book in a meeting with you. But the reality is, unless we make a time to sit and talk, it can only happen in a very ad hoc kind of way. And that's very rarely satisfying. So make time to talk. And when you're talking, take your time. One of the secrets of success in good communication is acting as if you've got all the time in the world. A lot of couples that I work with, they even come into like 90-minute couples therapy sessions, and particularly the men, sometimes the women, are really in a rush. It's like, yep, we've got to get this sorted. I only want one appointment. I don't want any more appointments. And so they try and rush, and then they just end up in loggerheads. But actually, if you take your time, and this is something that I train therapists to do, act as if you've got all day. Working with horses and dogs, it's a well-known, poorly kept secret. If you're working with horses, dogs, other animals, if you act as if you've got all the time in the world, it'll take you 10 minutes. If you act as if you've got 10 minutes, it'll take you all day. So act as if you've got all day. When talking, focus on listening actively. So listening actively is about prioritizing listening over talking. So that's really important. Probably should put this about prioritize listening over talking, because communicating, we think of communicating as stuff's coming out your mouth. I'm communicating. I'm a good communicator. I'm clear. I'm crisp. I'm making my points really well. That's not a good communicator in the context of any relationship. Might be okay for me standing up here on the stage where nobody's, trying to interrupt me or engage in a conversation with me. But when it comes to an interpersonal interaction, it doesn't work. We need to prioritize listening over talking, and we need to listen actively. What that means is that when our partner speaks, we need to repeat back what they've said. Yeah. And when they keep on talking, we need to repeat it. We need to repeat that next bit. And when they say some more, we need to repeat that as well. When they say some more, we need to repeat that as well. Until they say, yeah, I think you've got it. Because that's the point at which they are then ready to listen to us. What most couples end up in is a dynamic where I want to make my points and I want to be heard. And the other person sitting in their chair going, well, you never listen to me. I want to be heard. So what both of us are now doing in this conversation is trying to make sure that we are the ones that are heard. And guess what? Neither of us feels heard, because neither of us is prioritizing hearing the other person. So prioritize hearing the other person, and then even if your partner's not on board with this, ask, okay, have I heard you? Would it be okay if you had a go at trying to hear me now in the way that I've tried to hear you? And it's not perfect. It's a frustrating process, but the research is very clear that this is what's effective in interpersonal communication. Accept your partner's influence. This goes back to trust and believing that they're on your side. And sometimes you need to suspend your belief. If you're not very trusting, you just need to swallow your pride and go, okay, yep, my partner's trying to influence something about this here. I'm not sure that I agree with it. I don't feel like it's the right way forward, but maybe I just need to take a deep breath, sit back and think, okay, so what is it about their suggestion, about their idea, about what it is that they're trying to make happen here that we could take on board. And maybe, you know what, maybe it's okay if we just talk about it. Let's entertain it. I do this all the time with clients and supervisees and people that I'm working with. Let's just play it out. Okay, if we do this, then what? And then that, and what? And then what? How will this play out? And how will that fit with all the other things that we're trying to do? Okay, well, we've talked about it now. And normally, once we allow the conversation, it becomes clear to everybody what's going to work and what's not going to work. But if your partner's trying to say, hey, well, why don't we try this? And you go, no, that's not going to work. Well, they are now in the position of going, well, I've had this great idea and I'm trying to share it and I think it's going to change our lives. Now I'm totally invested in convincing you that my idea is correct. But on the other side, you're there going, it's not going to work. 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 I'm going to convince you. It's not going to work. I'm going to convince you. And then there you are back at loggerheads again. So open yourself up to that influence. Okay, let's look at your idea. Let's explore your idea. And blokes, don't be bloody patronizing about it. Yeah. Take responsibility for your feelings and practice self-soothing. So when we are in relationship, when we are in communication, we get triggered. Everybody gets triggered. It's normal. We get flooded. Men in particular, women for some reason don't get so triggered. Women can be like going off, but they're not usually as triggered as men. Men can be very quiet, but they're fuming inside and there's all of these feelings bursting around. They belong to you. You're like, yeah, but he said, and she made me. Nah, it doesn't actually work that way. No, it's your feelings that don't come from this thing that just happened. Usually they come from a long history of lived experience that's created you as the person you are. They're your feelings. You might be super furious at your partner for making you feel this way. But you know what? What's going to move the conversation forward is if you learn to self-soothe. If you learn to go for a walk, drink some water, meditate, do some laps of the pool, go for a run, ride your bike, play with the kids, play some video games. Doesn't matter. Learn how to self-soothe and commit yourself to coming back to the conversation. Last point for our webinar today is that when you're in financial stress, sometimes you think that the kids need. But the kids need new bikes, the kids need good Christmas presents, the kids need a big showy Christmas. Like I remember I had once when I was a kid, and that was my favorite Christmas. And now I want to give my kids that kind of Christmas every year. Kids do not need your money to be happy. They do not need to be bought things to be happy. They will compare. They'll compare themselves to the other kids, and this kid got that, and I didn't get that, and this kid got that, and the other kid got that. You'll find that stuff is usually much worse within your family than between families anyway. And if you were raised by parents without much money and they were preoccupied with themselves and they didn't have time for you and they argued about money amongst lots of other things, then you might have come to believe that it was the lack of money that made them and therefore you unhappy. But it wasn't. It wasn't the lack of money, because we know what kids need, and this is what kids need from you. They need time playing with you. They need time talking with you. There's the old adage, a family that eats together stays together. It's not about the food. The food creates a ritual, but the table, the kitchen table, the dining table, creates an opportunity for conversation. And it's a couple of easy conversation starters with kids. We do roses at my house. We do roses and thorns every day. Rose is what's the best thing that happened to you today? Thorn, what's the worst thing that happened today? Go around the family. Everybody has a go. You have a whole dinner time conversation around what happened in each person's day. They need you to believe that they're just fine the way they are, just the way they are. They are. They're perfect, just the way they are. We don't need them to be anything really. Like we have these feelings that we need them to be sports people and smart and do well at school and better than other kids, but we don't need that. They also need to know that they are loved for who they are, no matter what. And none of this costs us any money. We've got some financial mindset modules in the Uprise website. Just go to uprise.co. You don't even need to go employee, just sign in. And you can always reach out to Uprise for financial counselling and mindset coaching as you need to. Thanks, everyone, for your time today. There is a feedback link in the chat, which does work. So when you put your mouse over it, it will change colour and you can link to it. So thanks, everyone, for your attendance today. I really hope that you got something out of our session. It's been great to be talking about it and to know that it fits into pretty much 30 minutes. Take care. Bye.